All right, everybody, back at it. This video, I'm going to walk through and go over our third paper, which is our first paper that includes in-text citations and a works cited page. All right, so let's go to paper 3 handouts. Uh, right here, compare and contrast. So let's click on that and we'll go to view instructions. And I'm gonna have a few uploads here. Here's a video that walks through quality sources. I have the assignment and then I have a sample discussion board. So let's pull up the assignment first. I'm gonna download this and open it up on the big screen. All right. So paper 3, we're going to be doing a comparison and contrast, and this corresponds to pages 222, 235. That's in this week as well. The due date is Thursday, June 11th on Blackboard. MLA format, all that same jazz, all that stuff. This paper is worth a few more points, 225 more points, and we have a couple extra elements too. So one, clarity of thesis statement, introductory paragraph that sets up your paper. Organization of paper includes 4 or 5 main points in your body paragraphs. Remember, 1 point per paragraph with adequate comparison and contrast. These include a few quotes from outside sources. So in this paper, I'm fine if you just include 2 to 3 in-text citations in the entire paper. Now for the research paper, you're going to include in-text citation in each body paragraph. But in this paper, if you just include a couple, I'm fine with that. This is just really getting our feet wet with in-text citations, some outside research, and a works cited page. MLA citation and paper setup, correct in-text citation, and you have the videos from the discussion board that walks through that. I'll upload some more videos. Correct works cited page, that's really important. So you have the videos for that walks through that, and at least 3 full pages in this paper. You want to get to 3 full pages. All right, here's the description of the assignment. For this assignment, you will write a 3 to 4 page paper that compares and contrasts something. You must also include 2 to 3 outside sources and incorporate them into your paper using MLA style and format. According to our reading, when we compare, we examine 2 or more items for likenesses, differences, or both. And here are some options, right? These are just some options that I've come up with off the top of my head. We can compare and contrast 2 movies or book to movie adaptations. This, for my money, I think the movies would be pretty easy. You could do 2 movies within a franchise. You could do 2 movies within a genre, etc., etc. You can also contrast 2 television shows, 2 brand name products, 2 individuals, 2 cars, 2 solutions to a problem we were facing, 2 video games, 2 musicians, or 2 albums or 2 songs. You could do 2 albums from the same musician. You could do a song and a remake. You could do 2 rock bands or whatever, you know. You can compare and contrast 2 restaurants, 2 figures from sports, etc. You can compare, and this might be helpful if any of you are deciding what you want to major in or study in college. You can compare 2 careers, 2 majors. You could also compare and contrast community college versus university, you know, CCRI versus URI, something like that, right? You could do high school versus college. How is it different? You can also compare and contrast online learning versus in-person learning. So those are just, you're not limited to this list, but I think, if you pick something off this list, this might be easy. You could do, if you're doing brand name products, you could do phones, computers, streaming services, electronics, all that stuff. So this paper is a little different because in the first 2 papers, I specifically gave you the topic, right? The first paper's on the friend, the second one's on the philosophy. And this one, you're pretty much choosing your own topic. So there's that. And again, if any of you are struggling about what to write about, please reach out to me. So structure. Your paper will be set up like this. Start with an introductory paragraph that grabs the reader's attention and mentions your topic and some of the aspects you will be talking about. You will have a thesis statement at the end of your first paragraph. Follow with a number of body paragraphs that describe the aspects, one important aspect per paragraph. Your conclusion should reiterate your points and also point towards something else. The goal of this assignment is to critically compare and contrast our chosen objects through close reading and attention. Our project will be based on specific evidence developed through the writing process, which includes research. Use the practices we developed in the first and second papers to describe and examine. So yeah, on the back of this sheet, start to write a few things. This is if we're doing our free writing, pre-writing here. What are the first things that come to your mind to compare and contrast? Why did you choose these things? Start to write specific similarities, then go on to write differences. Feel free to make 2 columns that say similarities and differences as well. Also, read over the assignment and see if you have any questions. So you're comparing, contrasting, you're including outside information. Let me open up actually the Word document that goes over this, and we'll do a little practice stuff here. All right. Word document, live and in person. Okay, so here's the paper 3 Word document. So what's an easy one to do? I always this is you can do like, what's a good one? You could do Dunkin' versus Starbucks. This would be a good one, right? And what were the areas? So for your thesis, answer this question: which one do you think is better and why? Answer this question, and that's your thesis, right? Which one is better and why? What could you look at here? You could look at, obviously the coffee, right? Look at the coffee. This would be a whole paragraph on the coffee, right? You could look at differences in food. That would be a whole paragraph. Differences in price, whole paragraph. Location, that could be a whole paragraph. What else? What else could you look at here? Think of other aspects of these things. But this would be some areas you would look at, and you could just start to write about these. And if you, for your outside sources, you could just do a good old-fashioned Google search, right? Dunkin' versus Starbucks. And and that video is going to walk you through the quality sources, right? So when I'm talking about a quality source, I don't want you to use some dude's Reddit thread. These look like quality sources here. Chowhound, it looks like somebody it writes about food and whatnot. So this could be one of your sources, and it walks through this, right? And you could use something from this source. And you could also do this tasting table. So that looks like a quality source. There's your 2 sources, right? There you go. There's your outside sources for this. So there's that. Where else? So if you're doing Dunkin' versus Starbucks, you could also do like, Target versus Walmart might be interesting, right? What would that look like? So, just choose something that jumps out to you interesting, but also something that's going to be relatively easy. My one caveat here, if you're choosing like movies, video games, music, you want to choose something within the same genre, right? You don't want to compare and contrast the Texas Chainsaw Massacre to the Little Mermaid. It just doesn't make sense. Music, right? You don't want to compare and contrast Eazy-E with Willie Nelson. Doesn't make sense, right? Video games too. You're not going to compare and contrast Tetris with Grand Theft Auto. So if you're doing 2 video games, you might choose 2 sports games, 2 first-person shooter games. Similarly to television shows, you might compare and contrast Friends and The Office. Friends and 2 sitcoms. You wouldn't compare and contrast Seinfeld and The Sopranos, right? It just wouldn't make sense really. So make sure you stick within the same genre. If you're choosing something like that, that'll make it a little easier to do. And I'm going to pull this up, the sample for the discussion board for paper 3. So the discussion board for paper 3 is a little different, right? And I'm going to show you this. when you do your discussion board, let me pull this up too. Here's the sample discussion board for paper 3. This is what I want you to do. So in the first discussion board, remember I had you do an MLA document. This is MLA format. We should all have this burned into our cerebral cortexes now forever. MLA document, and then also what are the important elements of intro, thesis, meal, and conclusion, all that stuff. The second discussion board, I just wanted you to include an outline for your paper. In this one, I want you to include your topic, what you're comparing, contrasting. I want you to include a body paragraph with an outside quote, with an in-text citation, right? And then the works cited. And your works cited page is always going to go on a separate page. And it's always works cited no matter what. Separate page, works cited. It'll all, if it fits on one line, all on one line, but you're always going to indent the second and subsequent lines. And here's how you do it. And all those videos walk through it. Author's last name, comma, first name, title of the article, title of the site, the date it was published, URL. That's it. If there's no author, you would just have title of the article, right? If there's no author, title of the article, what the site's on, the date, and the URL. So that's that. That's it. Works cite's always on a separate page. For the in-text citation, again, there are multiple videos and links and handouts that walk through this. But here's a body paragraph, right? Remember, we're following meal. So what's my meal, my main idea? Main idea topic sentence. The original, and my topic is I'm comparing, contrasting the original Halloween with the Rob Zombie remake of Halloween, right? And that'd be interesting. If any of you like your horror movies and all that stuff, you can compare and contrast two horror movies. And here's my main idea topic sentence. The original Halloween is considered one of the most terrifying movies of all time. And then I have my quote. And you always want to lead into the quote. You never want a quote to be on its own, right? According to one review, and then I have my quotation marks, Halloween is a visceral experience. We aren't seeing the movie, we're having it happen to us. It's frightening. Maybe you don't like movies that are really scary, then don't see this one. Quotation marks, author's last name in the parenthetical, period on the outside. Again, though, if your article doesn't have an author, you'd put the first couple words or the title of the article. So that's my evidence. The evidence now is the quote. Here's my analysis of the evidence. Roger Ebert locates how the original movie was not only visually terrifying, but also how viewers could have a physical experience. And here's my statement. In contrast, Zombie's Halloween remake, with its gratuitous violence, goes for cheap shocks and meaningless gore. The original relies on tone, terror, and mood to create an atmosphere of dread that lingers with the viewer long after the movie is over. So again, if you're doing your topic, Starbucks versus Dunkin', your body paragraph, one major difference between Starbucks and Dunkin' Donuts is the price of coffee. According to the site, Dunkin' Donuts coffee is, you put the prices and you quote from that or whatever, right? This shows that Dunkin' Donuts coffee is a lot more affordable, blah, blah, blah. Do that for whatever topic you're comparing, contrasting, right? So that's an example of the discussion board. Not going to save that. And we looked at you could start to, so I would recommend choosing something that's, my goal when you have your own topic to choose, whenever you have your own topic to choose what you're interested in. Choose something interesting. What are you interested in? Also, what's easy, right? This class, we don't have a big turnaround, so you don't want to choose something that's so difficult and that's so broad. I remember I had a student one time who wanted to compare, like, World War II with another world. I'm like, man, you're not writing a book here, right? So you really want to zoom in and choose something small. I had him choose 2 battles from the war and compare it. But you don't want to choose something so overwhelmingly large that it's going to give you some problems. Choose something you're interested in, And what's easy? Who are some, I always lean toward arts, media, music. That's just what I'm interested in, right? So if you're doing two musicians, you might do the good old Biggie Tupac battle. I had a student write a really good paper comparing and contrasting the first two Notorious B.I.G. albums, Nicki Minaj and Cardi B, right? Two rock bands, Beatles, Stones. I just had a student write a really good paper about comparing and contrasting like Weezer and Green Day. Uh, so yeah, I don't think these are, you have a lot of good options here to look at. And again, like I mentioned, if any of you are struggling choosing what to deciding what to work on for this, please reach out to me and we'll work on it together. All right, so that's paper 3. We are moving away from, you know, our first two papers were more narrative papers, and now we're moving into more formal papers where you're including citations, research, the works cited, all this stuff, which leads to the research paper. However, though, if you think about it, every paper is really personal because you're choosing this, right? You're choosing your own personal thing. And one could actually even think about the first two papers as being quote unquote research papers. You're not including outside research, but you're in many ways researching your own lives and articulating your critical thinking of those things. So a lot of these papers intertwine and overlap. But all right, that is paper 3. Reach out to me if you have any questions.